Today on Tyler Would Build It, I'm going to build a master sword for my son, who is coming up on his 2nd birthday. So to begin this project, I printed out 2 copies of my template. I just found basically just a picture by Google searching for the master sword online, shrunk it down so that it fit on about 2 sheets of paper, which is about the right size for my son. I put pieces of tape around the edges of the template, made cutting a little bit easier, and then also when I traced it onto my wood, it gave the paper a little bit more thickness so that it was easier to trace. After taping around the edges of my template, I cut the entire thing out. One template will be for the blade and one for the hilt. You can see here how they are going to overlay once we cut them out. I grabbed a piece of 3" by 1/4" wood and traced my blade template onto the wood. And then it was a matter of grabbing my jigsaw to cut out the piece. I wanted to round the tip of the sword so that it wasn't pointy. Again, my son's only 2 years old, so I didn't want him to stab himself or other people with it. This top piece contains both the blade and the handle of the sword. You can see it roughly beginning to take shape in this shot. Next, I traced the hilt piece onto, again, my 3" piece of wood. And for the hilt, you will need 2 of these pieces that I'm now cutting out in this scene. So everything you need for this project is the blade piece, the 2 hilt pieces, and that's it. Next, in order just to get rid of any rough edges, I hopped on my belt sander and began to smooth any rough edges that were left by cutting it out on my jigsaw. I also hopped on my belt sander, grabbing both pieces of my hilt and making those as similar as possible by sanding them off. I then routed the handle with a 1/4" round over bit in order to make my handle round. And then I grabbed a 1/4" slant bit in order to make my blade more blade-like. Using a straight router bit, I routed out the place where the blade will go. You can see how it all starts to fit together once both those pieces have been routed out. And then they just kind of clamp onto the blade piece, like so. You can see in these shots that I also added a round over edge to my hilt piece. My camera for some reason stopped working at that time, dang it. So I sanded all my pieces down a little bit, and then I sprayed the blade with some gray spray paint. I added a dark stain to my hilt piece, and then I added an early American stain to my handle. I wanted to have a little bit of color to the sword, but not have to go overboard with all the texturing and all the over-the-top type things, especially if this is just a sword for my 2-year-old son. I next glued it all together by clamping the hilt onto the handle and blade piece, and wiped off any excess glue and clamped it shut. And here is the final product right here. I think it turned out really great. As with most of my project, there's some things that could have been a little bit better as far as the finish work, but overall I think it was really great, especially for how much my son chose to play with this thing.
You grab it the other way?